We are almost halfway through 2022. I'm going to share with you today some really important things that I've learned along my hobby journey, but especially in 2022, some things that have changed and some things to keep in mind when buying, collecting, investing sports cards. Stick around. Hello to all my sports card collectors, investors, all of my collectibles friends. We are here again for another video. I'm excited to make this one. We're going to cover this in its entirety. We're going to give an attempt to, anyway, some things that I'm finding important when buying, especially buying / investing in sports cards, which is however you want to call it. So this is going to be a very fun one. Stick around to the end too, because I think the last points are very, very important things to consider when buying cards. If you're new here, please hit that subscribe button. Tonight, I will be on the Off-Centered Show, our weekly Off-Centered Show on Brad, the Comeback Card Investors channel, and we're going to be meeting with Mike Geo of Sports Card Nonsense. Always love hanging out with Mike. He has got a new business that he wants to talk about, and so we are going to talk through all of that with him. It's at 9 p.m. Eastern on the Comeback Card Investors channel. Also, connect with me on IG at Sports Card Dad and on the Twitter machine, Sports Card Dad.
Dead or alive, you're coming with me.
All right, guys, the number one and most important piece of this to me, the most important piece of this topic when collecting sports cards is, are you running this as a business or are you just here to collect cards? Because those are two very different things. There's a huge differentiator there between, are you looking to buy, sell cards, flip cards as part of your hobby experience? Or is this simply, I'm a huge fan of the New Orleans Saints and I want to buy Drew Brees cards. I want to buy Marcus Colston cards. I want to collect certain team sets. Maybe it's 2009 when the Saints won the Super Bowl. I want to collect Saints cards from 2009. I'm using that as an example because that is my team. That's my PC team, if you will. Or are you looking to get into kind of a buying and selling? Are you looking to invest in some cards where you think like, you know what, I want to hold on to this long term? Or short-term buys and flips. Hey, I really like this player. He's having a really bad season. I think his cards could go back up in price over time. And so I'm getting in here and there's maybe a time frame attached to that. In the next 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, I'm going to look to buy it now and sell it for a higher price. This is a very important distinction to make, and you can also do both of these things, all of these things. It doesn't necessarily have to be one or the other. That's what makes the hobby so much fun. A lot of times people will buy, sell to level up cards, or they'll buy, sell to buy PC stuff, or long-term hold investment type cards. So there's many, many different ways to do this. There's not one way to collect. There's not one strategy. There are many strategies, and that's, again, what makes the hobby so fun. If you're on the fence about, am I just collecting cards or am I looking to buy, maybe I'll sell some. One thing I will say is maybe err on the side of caution to, you might be running this as a business down the road. So, and the reason why I say that is because, you know, right now when you're first getting in or getting back into the hobby, you might have kind of a sense of what you're doing. And then in 6 months, 12 months, you might say, oh man, I found these other sets, these other types of cards that I really like. Maybe I want to sell some of the stuff that I bought to get into some of the other things. And so very important to track your cost basis. So what you actually paid for a card and all the fees attached to that, as well as your sales price. So you're kind of tracking the transaction sort of stuff for tax purposes, but also just so you can keep kind of a running count of what you're doing and sticking to a specific plan. You might have, you know what, 80% of my stuff is going to be buy, sell, you know, where I'm buying to sell, to flip, and 20% is just the fun PC stuff, but it's really important to kind of go into it, I think, with the sense of, I might sell these at some point, or my family might want to sell these down the road. I might have expenses that come up, you know, to where I need to sell cards. So it's important to keep track of all of your costs associated with these transactions. Secondly, let's talk about opportunity cost. This is a huge one for me. What you'll find if you're new into the hobby or you're coming back in is there are a zillion card options. And even for a particular player, maybe you're a Tom Brady person. You're like, you know what? I'm going to come in, I'm buying Tom Brady cards.
Hearty multigrain bread.
Freshly baked.
It smells so good, I can almost taste it.
But you don't eat bread.
Well, good luck on where to start there. Even with rookie cards, he's got tons and tons and tons of different rookie cards, variations of those rookie cards. And that's before you even get into, refractors, second year, third year, fifth year, different types of parallels. And then once you get into grading, you've got different quality as far as, the grade, the quality of the condition of that particular card. So as you can see, there is so much different nuance. And that's just talking about one player. If you're collecting many different players, you've got many different options, variations, different sets to research and look into before kind of diving in and getting into this stuff. You also hear a lot about do your research before you start buying, but in reality, part of your research is buying, is actually getting into it, buying, trying to sell things, trying to figure that out. So you can learn a lot from watching YouTube videos. You can learn a lot from Instagram. You can learn a lot from hobby mentors, lots of different areas to really kind of research. But where you'll learn the most is actually doing it, getting into the nitty gritty of buying a card, trying to sell one, and figuring out like what works, what doesn't, and what you like in your own strategy. Where I learned very quickly about opportunity cost, or not really learned, but really got smacked in the face, was when I went to the National Card Show last year. This is the largest card show that exists on planet Earth. It was in Chicago last year, and there are more cards in that particular building, in that particular space, than maybe you'll ever see. I mean, it's a tremendous, tremendous show, but it showed me just walking around for the first 15 to 20 minutes that I could buy all sorts of different things. I could spend my money very quickly. And so I think that's where it's a good idea to figure out, okay, am I going in and am I buying vintage? Am I buying modern? Am I buying ultra modern? Am I buying sealed boxes? Or am I buying some of all of these things and figuring out percentages, figuring out which sports, which players? Guys, you can run through your money very, very quickly. And unless you're Bill Gates or Nat Turner, most of us have finite resources to where there's only so much money to go around and you just have to kind of pick and choose. There's been many a time that I've been at a show where I've spent my budget and then later on been like, oh man, I wish that I had waited to do this or that. So it's important to just kind of figure out that there is not that you have to walk into a card show knowing I'm going to buy XYZ card, because there is some fun to just going with the flow at a card show and not really having a plan. There's a lot of fun to that. But I think that it's not a bad idea to have it narrowed down to I'm focused on vintage today, or I'm focused on, or even more nuanced, I'm focused on 70s football cards today, or whatever, to where that way you can really kind of get the things you want, not get distracted, and then later on be like, oh man, I should have stuck to it. There was a card there that I was targeting leading up to the show, and then I got carried away and got into something else. Pay attention to macroeconomic trends. This is something that's not talked about very much in the hobby content landscape. There's a lot of card talk and a lot of very niche type content, to where you might see stuff about 90s basketball cards. You might see vintage baseball cards. You might see football card channel. But you don't hear necessarily a lot about stuff going on in the world that can have an effect on not just the hobby, but also just pricing for collectibles as a whole. So of course, the first quarter of 2022, our GDP in the United States was negative. If that happens 2 quarters in a row, that is considered we are in a recession. So that's something to kind of pay attention to, because typically, interest rates, whether they're positive, negative, this is going to have an effect on asset prices, including collectibles. It's not the whole picture, but it's part of the picture, and it's important. It's important to keep in mind. And we've been in a negative interest rate environment for a very long time, really going back to the subprime mortgage crisis, going back to 2009. And we are just now coming to a point where it's kind of teetering to where it looks like we may move into a positive interest rate environment, which has a negative effect on assets, collectibles, and so forth. You've seen it's not just cards. You've seen crypto. You've seen the stock markets move down lately. This is not just a sports card thing. It is a asset thing and prices. The question is the stuff overheated? How overheated? Or is it not overheated? And that's something that I've got to figure out. You've got to figure out. We're all trying to figure out. All the experts are trying to figure it out. And we only know as we go. So this is just stuff to keep in mind as you're looking at the entire picture. Macroeconomic finance stuff matters when it comes to to pricing. And that doesn't matter if you're an investor, a collector, because if you're a collector, it still affects the price of the cards. If you're an investor, it affects the price of the cards. You care about it regardless of kind of where you fall into the hobby landscape. New product, for the most part, in my opinion, is still too expensive. And what do I mean by this? Hobby boxes. So when we're seeing new hobby boxes of Prism come out, Topps Chrome, whatever, and it just doesn't matter on the sport. I'm just talking about new product that's coming out is, in my opinion, it's still too expensive. Value in the box doesn't equal the price tag from what I see for the most part. Yes, maybe you'll hit that, Ja Morant, RPA, whatever. But the reality is when you watch breaks on YouTube, you see this. If you want to really kind of dig into this more, watch breaks on YouTube. Yes, Leighton Sports Cards will have some monster hits, but man, they'll also go through a lot of very expensive boxes, and you can just see that there is not a lot of value there that they're getting out of those boxes. So people that are buying into these breaks, they're winning some, but there's also plenty of losses, and that's not really talked about as much. So, new product, still very expensive. If you go back 3, 4, 5 years, these boxes of Prism were a fraction of the cost. A lot of hobby people will talk about this. So if you're new coming in and you're thinking, oh, this is a normal price for a particular hobby box, it's not. It's not. It's a lot higher than what it's been in previous years. And so what can you take from that? Well, you can decide to just buy the singles. You can kind of see the stuff gets broken and then it goes on to the selling platforms. Just buy the singles that you want, or you can just wait on that new stuff and just say, like, you know what? Maybe I'm just not going to buy these particular rookies right this second. I'll give it a little bit of time, see if it cools off and reapproach. That's one. Or, look, if you just want those cards, then you go in. There's a lot of people that last year, they just wanted Trevor Lawrence rookie cards. They went in and they bought Trevor Lawrence rookie cards. Some people just have a ton of money and they want the stuff. So look, if you have that disposable income, you've got the resources, then absolutely. But in many, many cases, the prices come down on that new product. There's a lot of excitement that comes out. It's the new Prism football. It's the new National Treasures basketball. And then as time goes on, that stuff kind of moves downward in price. Now, obviously, you've got the big time RPAs. You've got big time, patch autos for significant players. And those sorts of things are still expensive. They stay expensive. But the main point is that it's hot coming out, and then it slowly kind of wanes. Price points usually kind of move down on that stuff. What I do if I want to rip packs, I've done this with my buddies at the National. We actually ripped an 89 Pro Set football box looking for Barry Sanders rookie cards and Troy Aikman rookie cards.
Jack, Troy Aikman.
Ooh, Anthony Nunez.
So here's the Troy Aikman.
Oh, nice. Oh, there it is. UCLA.
Yeah, he's actually sitting over there.
Oh, that's funny.
Look at that, another one. Coalition at its best.
You guys are pulling all the heat.
Superstars.
88 Topps football, very affordable. Bo Jackson rookie cards are in there. And it's the same for, baseball from that time period. If you go back. Now, granted, are you going to pull $1 million card out of those boxes? No, but it's a $30 box for 24 packs or 36 packs, and it's fun. And it's ripping packs from my childhood. So it doesn't necessarily have to mean that if we're going to buy and rip packs that we have to buy this very expensive new product. There are other things out there as well. Player performance can be very overrated when it comes to sports card prices. You hear about this all the time. I hear tons of content about this where it's, if this particular player does XYZ in the playoffs, their cards are going to go crazy. Well, the problem is that over the last 2 years, we've kind of had this weird Bermuda Triangle situation where that actually did happen for a 2-year span of time. But if we're going back years and years, if we're looking at more of the historical data, you can see that a lot of players had amazing things happen. They won Super Bowls. They won a World Series. They did this, that, the other thing, MVPs, and their card prices had very little movement. Okay, so the idea that we're going to continue on with, the sort of the player performance thing means everything. It means a piece of it. It certainly matters. If a guy turns into the next Michael Jordan, he wins 20 rings, then I'm sure that probably can't hurt his or her card prices. But in reality, though, there are a ton of other examples where there's amazing feats that are accomplished, and it has very little effect on sports card pricing. So we have to keep that in effect. Yes, or we have to keep that in mind. It can have an effect, but it also could be very short-lived. That's the other part is, someone does something amazing, there's a price spike, and then 2 weeks later, the price spike vanishes and it's back down to where it was. It's an initial kind of excitement. Everyone jumps on board and it's like, oh my gosh, they're going to win the title. And they buy these prices, and then a few weeks later, those prices vanish. We are living in an influencer type culture, marketing culture. And when I say influencer, you're probably thinking of the Logan Pauls and the Kim Kardashians and these people where literally I'm sure if Kim Kardashian puts some makeup on her Instagram or whatever, then she gets paid X amount and she sells Y and she makes a ton of money. They make a lot of money. These are monster influencers that people care about what products they're using. Logan Paul would be a similar example. He's got 25 million subscribers. In the card world, it's a lot more niche. I've got a channel. Lots of people have channels. A lot of people have huge Instagram followings. But the thing that's interesting about cards is people will share the cards that they buy. And what's kind of cool about this is that you can actually you'll find cards this way that you've never seen before. Like I said before, going back to opportunity cost, there's a zillion different card options out there. So me being, just as an example, I'm a Drew Brees PC. That's my personal collection. When I say PC, Drew Brees is a guy I like to collect. So there are all the time it happens where on Instagram, someone will post a Drew Brees card, or I'll get tagged in a post where someone put up a Drew Brees card so that I see it. And it gives me an idea like, oh man, I didn't even know that rookie card existed, or I didn't know that parallel existed. It's really cool. I like it. And so it can have an influence in buying behavior, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. It could also bring attention to cards that you were not aware of, and that can be a fun kind of find. And so you can go down a rabbit hole, and maybe you don't buy that particular card, but maybe it's a different player, different set, or a different set, it's something related to it. So there is a lot of, when we think of influencers in sports cards, there's millions of influencers in sports cards because there's tons and tons of people, whether they're on YouTube or Instagram or Twitter, that are sharing their cards that they own in their collection or that they're buying, or, I like this, I like that. And that can help share cards that people didn't otherwise knew existed. So that can be kind of a cool thing, but it is look, as far as marketing 101 in 2022, and this is not a new thing, also understand that influencer marketing, while it's not a bad thing, you can find cards, it also can have an effect on pricing in certain points for certain cards. And it's not even just, it can be, auction houses. They're out promoting, they're marketing their auctions, and it brings attention to a particular card. This all affects pricing. These are all things. So a lot of times, the reason why I bring this up is because a lot of times the sports card market and pricing doesn't make sense. You'll hear about this all the time where it's like, look at Tim Duncan. He's won 5 titles and this and that and whatever. And his cards are a fraction of the cost of Michael Jordan. Let's just throw him out as an example. These are all things that are in our hobby that are kind of fun because there's a lot of things that there are patterns that you can kind of track to try to predict what's going to happen next. But in reality, in collectibles in general, not just sports cards, there is a lot of stuff that doesn't make any sense at all. And so just understand that going in. If you are someone that's trying to buy, to sell, you're trying to figure out kind of supply, demand, and rarity versus, common stuff. There's things that won't make sense to you, and that's just kind of part of the journey. So I think there's an acceptance of that, an element of it that if you're gonna operate if it's a business for you, you have to understand that there are going to be certain times where stuff just doesn't make any sense. Guys, thank you very much for joining me on this journey. Buying cards in 2022, it's a different world than it was a year ago, 2 years ago, probably 5 years ago, but it's a lot of fun. We are in an amazing hobby here, and collectibles in general are a fun distraction and a fun way of kind of attaching to an athlete, to childhood through nostalgia. There's a lot of different things that come from the amazing sports card hobby. So guys, thank you again. Please put your thoughts, comments down below. I'd like to hear about it. What are you doing as far as just buying strategies, investing in cards? Let me know. Stay healthy, stay awesome. I will talk to you again later.